Catherine Nameth. In October 2002, Catherine Nameth stopped by her parents' cabin on Loon Lake, Wisconsin on a rainy night. The cabin was unoccupied because her parents had left that day for their winter home in Florida. Nameth had stopped there to get some food from the freezer. Nameth was an emergency medical technician with the Elko ambulance squad. A few minutes after arriving at the cabin, she called for help on her radio. She used her radio identification number, saying, "This is 96. There's a man with a raincoat and he's scruffy looking." And then the radio went dead. Her husband tried to contact her by radio without success. He then decided to go to the cabin with their son. When they arrived at the cabin, they found Nameth lying on the floor. She was still breathing and was semi-conscious. They asked her if she knew the attacker, but she said she didn't know. She died while being airlifted to the hospital. Officials said that nothing was stolen and that it didn't appear to be a random attack. Evidence from the cabin showed that she was chased through the property trying to fight off her attacker, but received multiple stab wounds. Police have DNA evidence but have been unable to receive a match. Some believed the killing was related to an embezzlement investigation with her husband along with 3 others from the Elko Fire Department board. The embezzlement investigation was resolved as one-time treasurer for the department admitted taking at least $3,500 and was fired. There have been no suspects or any leads in the case, and Catherine's murder remains unsolved. Joshua Maddux. Joshua Maddux was 18 years old on May 8, 2008, the day he was last seen at his parents' home in Woodland Park, Colorado. He told his sister he was going for a walk. He never returned home and his parents reported him missing the next day. Family members conducted several searches but were unable to find any trace of him. Days turned to weeks, weeks turned to months, and months turned to years. Then, 7 years later, his skeletal remains were found less than a mile away from his home, stuffed in the chimney of an abandoned cabin only 2 blocks from his home. The body was found when the cabin was being demolished, and it had been empty for about 10 years according to the owner. Chuck Murphy, the cabin's owner, said his family bought the cabin in the 50s and was used as a rental property until about 3 years before Josh's disappearance. Occasionally, Chuck would go and check on the cabin, but never check the chimney. He said there was mice, chipmunks and raccoons living in there, and it smelled really bad. The coroner suspected the teen was trying to enter the cabin by shimmying down the chimney and got stuck. When the teen's skeletons were found, his knees reportedly were above his head, and a hand was covering his face. Although the coroner ruled his death accidental, many people do not believe this and think foul play was involved. One of the strangest things about Josh's death is the fact that he was inside the chimney wearing just a ripped thermal shirt. The rest of his clothes were found inside the cabin, so he must have had access to the cabin too. So the question arises, why would he need to enter the cabin by going down the chimney? Moreover, the construction workers who found the body said a large piece of furniture was blocking the fireplace, so Maddux would not have been able to access the chimney from there or to have exited from there. There was also rebar installed on top of the chimney to stop animals from coming through, which would have made it nearly impossible for him to enter from the top. It doesn't make any sense that he would go through all the trouble just to enter the cabin even though he already had access to it, determined by the clothes found inside the cabin. Chuck Murphy is convinced that Joshua's death was not an accident. Things became more complicated when a post showed up on Reddit in 2015, where the commenter said that they were good friends with Josh and went to high school with him and another guy named Andy. After graduating, Josh had started hanging out with Andy a lot. Andy apparently told people he and Josh were planning a trip to New Mexico together. Shortly after this was when Josh went missing. Andy did make it to New Mexico, where he supposedly stabbed a disabled man to death, and when arrested also admitted to killing a woman in Taos and stuffing her body in a barrel. When police went to Taos, they found the woman in the barrel, but they already had someone in custody for the crime, so decided not to charge Andy. The witness of the disabled man being stabbed was then killed in a bar fight, and without him, police didn't have anything against Andy, so charges were eventually dropped for that crime. The poster also goes on to state that several people in Woodland Park also reported to the police that they heard rumors that Andy bragged about putting Josh in a hole. Even though many people asked police to question Andy regarding Josh's death, Andy was never investigated, and Joshua's death remains a mystery. The Boles Family. On 13th August 1965, James Boles, his wife Darlene, and their sons Robert and Thomas moved to a cabin in Crestline, California. After going the entire first weekend without hearing from anybody, James's mother called several other relatives and her son's workplace to see what was going on. As it turned out, nobody had any contact with the Boles family since the day they left. Darlene's brother, Floyd, then contacted the construction company who had built the cabin to see if they could go by and check on the family. Floyd never heard back. Next, he contacted the San Bernardino Sheriff's Office, who said they would pass on the wellness check to the local substation, but again, Floyd didn't hear back. Floyd then decided to go to the Crestline himself to make sure everybody was okay. Floyd asked an employee of his who was familiar with the area to go with him. Floyd and his employee reached the cabin at about 5 p.m. Once there, they noticed that neither the family car was in the driveway. They walked up on the deck to look in the windows. Through the window, Floyd saw a family's dog on the couch, covered in blood and not moving. Going into the cabin alone, Floyd headed past the empty living room and kitchen and discovered the 4 bodies of Boles family in the master bedroom. Each member of the family had been shot multiple times with .22 caliber bullets. At 5:10 p.m., Floyd notified the police. When the police arrived at the cabin, they found James lying on his back on the floor of the bedroom in a pool of blood. 13-year-old Bobby was found in a sitting position back to the wall. Darlene was found in a crouched position in the closet, indicating she had been shielding her youngest son, Tommy, at the time of their deaths. They also found blood smears in the living room and dinette area, which seemed to lead to the back bedroom. 35 .22 caliber shell casings were found in the cabin, 5 in the living room and 30 in the bedroom where the family was killed. Blood smears on the bedding in the master bedroom seemed to indicate that a weapon might have been wiped clean on the bed. Detectives were also able to find footprints in the size 11 in the cabin. Detectives searched outside the cabin for footprints, but it had rained on Sunday, the night before the bodies were discovered, so they had no luck. The wallet James carried was found in the cabin, but contained no money. About 65 yards away from the cabin, their car was located, and detectives staked it out for a while in case the suspect returned, but again, no luck. A local paper boy confirmed that the car had been there since at least 6 a.m. on Sunday, August 15th. A canvass of the area turned up very little clues, as most other cabins within reasonable distance were part-timers and had been empty for the weekend. The only exception the first day of canvassing was the Ogles, who had seen James on the evening of Saturday the 14th. He seemed in good spirits and they had chatted for a few minutes before they had said their goodbyes. The Ogles hadn't heard anything unusual, but said they probably wouldn't have, as there was a very large party happening a few streets away and they had been trying to ignore the noise. Another witness said the family ate dinner at the local San Moritz club Saturday evening, and James seemed visibly upset after making a phone call. Yet another contact stated James had told them the family was going to have a visitor around 8 p.m. on the evening of Saturday the 14th. Several witnesses had spotted two unfamiliar cars parked in the family's driveway. Over the next year, the investigation stalled due to lack of clues and strong suspects. Several suspects with no motive but were in the vicinity were vetted and cleared. The most promising suspect came in the form of George Robert Stewart, who was wanted on a mental warrant from Alabama, where he was suspected in the murder of Evans' brothers, two young boys he had molested while living with their family. He had worked at a church camp on the mountain in the nearby area of the Twin Peaks. The church confirmed that they had been closed that particular weekend, so he was free to do as he wished. George was questioned and given a polygraph test. He failed the test. However, after proving he was in New Orleans at the time of the murders, Stewart was released. With no suspects, the brutal murders of the Boles family is still unsolved.
Chasey and Bird. On March 7, 1983, Chasey and Bird was dropped off at Bensalem High School in Bensalem Township, Pennsylvania, by her mother's then-boyfriend, Paul Greenwald. She was a 9th grader at the time. She was suspended from school and wasn't allowed to attend classes again until her mother met with the principal, but she'd kept this a secret from her family. After Chasey was dropped off, Chasey tried to get her friends to skip school with her, but they would not. This would be the last time she was heard from. Initially, police believed Chasey had run away. She had left home before for one night after a fight with her mother. Prior to her disappearance, Chasey told a friend she might be pregnant. Authorities don't know if she was in fact pregnant or who the father of the baby could be, although Chasey's friend stated she had been dating 2 boys. Despite numerous unverified sightings, her family and close friends do not believe she ran away, as Chasey would have contacted at least one person if she had. She didn't even attend her mother's funeral. 7 months after Chasey's disappearance, her mother, Jean Louise Bird, also disappeared. Jean's partially clothed, decomposed body was located on October 18, 1983, in Blackbird State Forest in Newcastle County, Delaware. Heavy-duty tape had been wrapped around her mouth and her face, and the cause of death was asphyxiation. Jean had last been seen 11 days prior in her son's apartment complex in Bensalem Township. She had stopped seeing Greenwald before her disappearance. They had had a troubled relationship, and once, in 1980, Greenwald kidnapped her at knife point. Greenwald was arrested in 1984 and charged in Jean's death. He pled guilty to manslaughter. Officials questioned him, hoping to elicit information about Chasey's disappearance, but Greenwald admitted nothing. Greenwald was never charged in connection with Chasey's disappearance. Greenwald committed suicide in his prison cell just a day before he was to be sentenced. Greenwald was long considered a suspect in Chasey's disappearance, but investigators no longer believe he was involved. Chasey's case remains unsolved, and foul play is suspected in her disappearance.